My name is Alexis Sersha, and with Tanya, we welcome you to this space. And so let us begin in this living in the flow. It is just such a huge topic, for each and every one of us. And it took a while to get into this space, hasn't it, Tanya? It was just such a huge process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't say it was sort of like a walk in the park,
No, we
but
can't
now it
say.
is.
Now it is. Yeah. Yeah. So when we had few chats before, it was just amazing to realize just how in so many ways, like, we are unique, and yet at the same time we are just so similar to each other. Similar in a way that, because once you go into that flow of things, you can recognize the person, like people sort of talk about all these, okay, so I've integrated the soul, I've met the soul. And yet, unless your life has changed, and it changes not drastically, it changes slowly, because your soul knows how you work, who you are, your life. It knows the intimate details of your life, and it doesn't really want to give you a hard time in disrupting anything. And basically your soul doesn't actually make it, leaves all of the choices to you, the human self. But at the same time, like, once you touch upon from that, being that limited human, once you touch upon that timelessness, that gigantic hugeness of yourself as a soul, that once you start feeling that, once you start realizing that, once you start swimming in that and allowing that part to be part of your life automatically changes, starts changing. And the human part doesn't always welcome those changes, because as a human self, you are very often so filled, you want everything to be predictable, you want everything to be the same, you want nothing to change, and yet you want everything to change because you're not happy in that. So, the human self is full of these kind of contradictions, and yet the presence of your soul changes everything. And once you experience that, you very easily, instantly recognize it in another, because there are those kind of similarities. And that's how you can tell whether someone is talking from the theory, or whether they're actually living it to whatever degree that they are living it. And it's not really saying that living in theory is bad, because we've all been there. There's this huge compassion to all of those different kind of stages, and some people have given themselves a little bit of an easier life this time, and some people have given themselves a more challenging life, and they've had perhaps horrific experiences in their childhood. So for them it is a much more bigger jump, much more bigger leap to sort of start trusting, to be vulnerable, to be open, to be flowing, because now in this flow you have this support, while as a single human being in a limitation, you didn't have support. You were on your own, and that's why you tried to control. That's why you tried to do the same things over and over, because it felt safe. It felt safe because you thought, well, I know how this works, so if I keep doing things the same way, I'll be safe, you see. But when you are in your arms of the soul, and these are just analogies because you can't really explain it with words. When you are in the arms of the soul, then safety, it becomes irrelevant. It's no longer even makes any sense. You can remember it from your mind, what it was like to feel unsafe. But when you have the presence of your soul self, really, in your life, in your everyday life, safety is a mute point. It makes no, because you are completely safe. How can you not be safe when you are timeless, when you are eternal, when you are just, you realize you are the co-creator of this game that you're playing as a human being? It gives you a completely different perspective. But you have to go into that space where you feel it. You feel yourself timeless. You feel yourself forever. You feel yourself eternal. Because as long as you don't feel it, you don't experience it. It's not real for you. Over to you, dear Tanya.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where we were actually yesterday saying, oh, trust would be an excellent point to touch base with, because that's the thing is, do you trust or don't you trust? Because the human has become accustomed to living in self-doubt and to living in fear in order to feel safe. So the fear was in place in order to create a false sense of safety. And because we, of course, have been doing that for so many centuries, it's not only this lifetime, we have been around for so long and been creating that. One of the major shifts when we start feeling, diving into soul, into being all, so not being just human, realizing, oh, wait a minute, I am all of this, then we start realizing something fantastic, which is, wait a minute, so do I trust or don't I trust? And this starts becoming very evident in everyday situations, like simple situations, in which then everyone receives these gentle invitations, these gentle nudges. So basically, our expanded self presents itself so gently with these simple invitations that aren't that huge, but they seem so, when we start taking those first steps, they seem so different from what we were accustomed to. And we are the ones who choose. So basically, we get the invitation, we feel it, we know it, and then we still have the opportunity to choose, I accept the invitation and live it. And so basically, the marriage, the fusion of human and divine starts becoming more and more solid. It's just like any other relationship, really, as we allow ourselves to trust. Okay, if I'm getting this invitation, obviously it's not for my jeopardy. It could not be, because soul is so happy that I finally am saying yes. So of course, any invitation is to my highest purpose, to my highest good. And there's even no good and bad, really, but just for the purpose of this sharing, this conversation, because that even becomes so diffuse. I don't have a sense of good and bad in my life anymore. I really cannot. I cannot relate to that anymore. But for this conversation, so you realize that each invitation, when you accept it, only brings you absolute joy, serenity, peace. So it never brings you into space of conflict, into space of rejection. And gradually, as you say yes to these invitations, yes, at some point there is nothing else. So then you don't, in my case, it's like I came to a point where I no longer need to be listening for the invitations or be saying yes, because I have said I surrender to this 100% of the time. There, so I made it easy for me.
Yes,
So,
why do you have
okay.
to keep doing? Yeah.
So I made it easy. So, oh gosh, I pass on the choice thing, okay? Just, yeah, okay, let's go with it.
Oh my gosh. And the human, it's actually quite cute how we make it really difficult. And yet, for those people that are still in that process, because it definitely is a process, and and they ask, why is it so hard? Why are all these so-called bad things happening, in my life? And for me, I had some experience, like when I was kind of learning about trust. So I would be going and doing things, and I said yes, 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 and then very bad things, not very bad things, but things that shocked me happened. For example, let's say I would have like a really wonderful a time the whole afternoon, and all of a sudden, bang, I would hit something with a car or something. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
So I've opened myself up. I trusted you, soul. So that's before, when the human self is still learning. I trusted you, soul,
Yeah.
and look what happened. And then it was during those kind of happenings that I realized that this relationship doesn't have to do just with the so-called bliss times. All of that becomes later when you, like you said,
Yes.
when you go into the spaces where good and bad, it's meaningless. But before that, when you're still swimming in those kind of ideas of the separated human, you have to experience the so-called bad, because then you realize, wow, even through the worst kind of things, even through these kind of emotions and doubts and the most kind of biggest fears that I can actually feel them, and I'm still safe. Because when you're coming from that old energy, we are, as a human being, your body and your energy body is filled with those patterns that are from duality, that are really hard, that are from ancestry, from wars, from suffering, from the biggest disappointments, from the biggest heartbreak possible. We've experienced it all, and these kind of things are in our body. And when you're going through that clearing, that's what you meet. You meet it because
Yeah.
it gets solved. It goes into its own freedom, into neutrality through you. Unfortunately, for the human doesn't like that part. It goes through you. And when you're experiencing those, firstly, you realize that, wow, I am a master of all of my emotions. The emotions don't control me, because the separated human, that's a biggie. That's why people do the drugs. They get lost in drugs. They get lost for lifetimes, because they're trying to escape these things, because they think they can't tolerate this kind of intensity. But you realize with your soul present, as you're allowing more and more of this presence, it will keep cleansing, and it gives you not the power in the old way, but this ability, masterly ability, to realize that, wow, I am sovereign. I have this ability, that even this kind of emotion that in the past would totally scare me, I would be maybe running from it lifetimes, and now look at it. Yes, it's not pleasant for sure to feel, but I felt it for a few seconds, and wow, this centuries old thing is now free. It's neutral. It wasn't pleasant, but look, I'm a master. You see, so that's why people experience those so-called negative things, painful things, firstly for release, secondly to give you this ability to realize that you truly are a king and a queen in your sovereign space. There is no
Yeah.
emotion, there is no fear, there is nothing, absolutely nothing in your energy that you need to fear. But that comes when you allow enough of your soul self to be present, because otherwise you're trying to resolve this with your mind, and your mind is
Exactly.
not able or capable, nor was it made for that. It gets a lot of blame, but it's only blame because it's trying to serve you the master, and you have to take that seat of your kingdom, not try to get the mind to do something it wasn't made to do. You see, and it's like all of these things are happening all kind of at the same time. So you feel the presence, you allow more, you trust more. Maybe you go through a couple of hours of the day when you trust, your presence is more, and then all of a sudden more, of course, gets stirred up. But know that that comes to an end. It does. Like when you're in the throes of those things, and maybe your body's going through some diseases, because diseases can manifest. But no, and then all of a sudden you go into fear and all of that. This is few years, it's like a decade. It's a huge process, but it's actually very short considering that we've lived, this kind of for centuries. But it does come to an end. And this is where we are kind of talking about this living in the flow. And living in the flow, it also like makes you realize that, oh my gosh, this is just the beginning of the discovery. It's not by far the end. It's the end of that integration process. But it is just the beginning of this new life. And in this new life, with being able to do so much more, being able to realize all your talents, you keep realizing your talents more and more. And it's like, wow, today, look what I can feel today. I wasn't able to perceive that yesterday. So it's not like some kind of like what the human self imagined this enlightenment to be, some kind of dead end. This is it, we're finished now, we're not going, nothing's going to move. No, everything moves even more. It's just that you are able to deal with it, whatever first, because we're living with alongside mass consciousness. You're able to live with anything that mass consciousness throws at you, and believe me, it will keep throwing things at you because it knows that you are there. It knows it can't control you. It's like its own entity. How are your experiences with that?
Yeah, that's interesting because two things that I'd
Yeah.
like to share in that. So,
Yeah.
one, going back to what you were saying. So while we're in the initial stages of really accepting soul self, higher self, or whatever. It doesn't really matter the name here that we call it, because
Yes.
people call it so many different names, but I'm sure everyone knows what we're talking about. So when we start allowing that, and then it's like we live these brilliant, beautiful, like fantastically abundant moments, and then bam, something comes up. And that's where the key thing is because guilt and shame always show up.
Yes.
When those things come, and guilt and shame are really just there. They were there to keep us in place in mass consciousness. And when we are then, oh, wait a minute. So I see the guilt and shame. I see myself feeling frustrated and angry and whatever in that moment happened in that moment. And then you just stay really in that trust, in the silence within. And that's where the forgiveness comes from. The forgiveness is impossible to achieve from the mind. The mind was not conceived for that. It's conceived to serve you. But the forgiveness is only available when the human allows himself or herself, whatever, because we're genderless, really, to just fall into those loving arms and say, okay, I accept this. And that's where guilt and shame shift gradually, until you come to a point where you no longer feel any guilt or shame or blame. It just disappears. But now, coming into the experiences that you were talking about, of still experiencing, obviously we are alongside mass consciousness. So for instance, and even this weekend, I shared a video about that. I recently got myself a scooter. And I'd never, of course, had a motorbike. And this one is the highest that I can have with my car driver's license, because I want to sort of be able to travel a bit further than just near home. So I got myself onto that scooter. And the first things I realized were that the invitation to get it was, of course, because it's a wonderful thing to feel the freedom of not having a seatbelt, of being, completely unprotected, basically. And then as I'm on the scooter and I'm riding it and I'm super imbalanced and all, because it's just right beginning, and I was feeling that old mechanism I used to have long time ago of learning, which is, oops, I've done something wrong. And immediately I realized, oh, but it's okay. So the mechanism also of self-criticism disappears, but for it to really definitely not to be used, because we're living alongside mass consciousness, we have to consciously choose not to go there,
Yes, yes.
because it's accessible. So I could easily
Yes.
have grabbed
Easy.
onto,
Yes,
say, oh gosh, I'm
yes,
so stupid. Why am I doing
yes.
this? Oh, why don't I learn faster and stuff like
Mm-hmm,
that?
mm-hmm,
Because it's there,
mm-hmm.
it's not
Yes.
necessarily in me, but it's right there. I can
Mm-hmm,
grab it
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
anytime. And
mm-hmm,
so basically, living in this flow, we really have to be very aware
mm-hmm,
all the time of where we
mm-hmm.
choose to be.
Yes,
And
yes.
so on the bike,
Mm-hmm,
other than experiencing gentleness,
mm-hmm,
so really learning something quite challenging in such a gentle way, never
mm-hmm,
getting frustrated, never pushing myself too hard, and never wanting to go faster than
mm-hmm,
the rhythm is at the moment, and realizing I'm safe anyway. I mean, I'm safe. I know that I am
mm-hmm,
safe, and that knowingness is not sort of a kind of a positive thought convincing
mm-hmm,
myself whatever. It's a knowingness
mm-hmm,
that, because people will come and say, oh, I've got a friend, and she or
mm-hmm,
he had whatever accident and whatever, people
mm-hmm,
will say these things,
mm-hmm,
and you
mm-hmm.
will say, yeah, well, but that's not me.
Yes. You know,
And this
mm-hmm,
happens over and
mm-hmm,
over again
mm-hmm.
with all sorts of experiences. It's really keeping on staying in this
Yeah.
knowingness that you are not that, and
Mm-hmm,
that's where it really requires
mm-hmm,
us to
mm-hmm,
be very firm and stable in our
mm-hmm.
conscious choice to remain in our isness.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And, this is all for me like a big discovery, really, because with this thing, we have only each other. So there's no book really to kind of, because we
Yeah.
were the first, like we are the first with experiencing this, and even constantly we're the first, so there isn't any cosmic book that we can look up these things. So you just experiment. But I find that I really enjoy now this experimentation. So I can, for
Yeah.
example, let's say here I am in my city place, and to go anywhere, it's really quite convenient and central because I can go north, west, or south, east. I can go on a boat, but I have to go through this thick traffic, and also they're building and building and stuff like that. And initially it's like, oh my god, they're building again, and the noise of the machinery and the diesel and all of those kind of four-wheel drive diesel fumes and stuff. And then I realized, okay, so what if I do this differently? So this would frustrate me, and I couldn't always wait until I get out of town. All of a sudden, the space opens, and you feel that freedom and spaciousness, that you feel in nature, and that wildness. But now, then I've started thinking, okay, so how do we do this differently? And I invite this presence, this isness of me to be, this soul to be present, and then we breathe. And instead of going into that anger, which is the mass consciousness response to the traffic, to the diesel fumes, to all of these, it's like, wow, what an interesting experience. My soul self has never breathed in the diesel fumes. So let's breathe in the diesel fumes, because this is all just me. And then I also given myself, like, okay, so instead of, this is all little tricks to get out of that mass consciousness. So
Yeah.
instead of what I normally would piss me off, really, some driver doing something, it's like, what about if that reminded me to go deeper into my self-love? And
Yeah.
initially there is this resistance, because it's like, no, I can't give this person my self-love. They don't deserve, that kind of resistance. And it's like, no, I can. So instead of this
Yeah.
person now triggering me to be pissed off, it's like, no, I actually am going to feel self-love, or I'm going to go deeper. It's like a little reminder. You see, so all of these things that used to, because when you go into this space, you instantly start creating. There is no more buffer. So if you're, like you said, if you take mass consciousness to be your truth, what mass consciousness is telling you in that moment, that's what you create. So
Yeah.
if you create people that will make you angry on the road, all of a sudden synchronicity will happen and you will have all these people from everywhere just trying to make you angry, because you are the creator of your reality. Your
Yeah.
energy is perfectly responding to you. So then you can just go be pissed off, more pissed off, pissed off, pissed off. But all you realize, shit, I'm the creator. No, I will do the peaceful, seamless moving. But it's not just to actually think about it, like you said. You have to actually feel it. You have to release all of that mass consciousness. But initially, it's not easy because it's such a habit. And mass consciousness doesn't want to be released, and it doesn't want to release you. But you just have to have that presence, and you have to have that choice, and you have to be so unrelenting, no, and not with force and power, but it's just
No.
that, no, I choose me, I choose love, I choose to be a master, I am a master. And then you feel it, and then all of a sudden the road opens. All of a sudden you kind of all of a sudden get this bigger view. All of a sudden you see the sky and the clouds and how they're moving, unconcerned by anything, all of a sudden. And you feel, wow, I'm unconcerned by anything. So you then allow that
Exactly.
part to be driving, and all of a sudden you find yourself by yourself on the road, all those angry drivers further along, other angry drivers way behind, and you're there cruising on your own in between this kind of mass
Exactly.
consciousness. But like you said, you have to be continually on, it's not on guard, would not be the right, because that kind of,
No, it's being firm, I believe, being
yeah,
stable,
yeah,
choosing stability.
yeah, and choosing yourself always, choosing
Yeah.
mastery always, and within every situation. Because initially, from the human point of view, it will say, wow, I can feel my soul when it's pretty. I'm sitting next to the river, wow, I can feel my soul.
There it's
That's
beautiful and it's
right.
pretty.
And it's
Yeah.
easy, but you can feel your soul everywhere,
Anywhere.
because all is your energy. You are constantly
Yeah.
creating. The diesel fumes are your energy that want to be transformed. And when people also think about, okay, so how do we transform this earth? Firstly, earth is perfect as it is, because everyone within it has their own experiences perfectly reflected to where their consciousness is. So there is nothing to fix. At the same time, when you want to, like all of a sudden, let's say, I want to live in a world that doesn't have hunger, that doesn't have hungry kids and tortured kids and whatever have you, then you have to then uh, um, integrate that part of your energy that holds the hungry kids, because it's you are creating that. Because when you are in this mastery, you are creating, you have agreed, you are creating from your energy that. And then, so instead of pushing it away, instead of blaming it on anyone else, you breathe it in and you allow the presence of your I am that I am to be with that. And all of a sudden, there's less and less in your reality. What other people are choosing, you can't change. So,
Yeah.
and this is where, like, I'm now playing with this so much, like, okay, so how do I change this? How I not change as in like, I have to change something, but to
Mm-hmm.
get the energy into the flow, to get the energy moving,
Yeah.
and to just see what kind of worlds, what kind of like experiences I can now experience with the presence, with me being in this presence, because it certainly is not going to be the same as it was, before. So it is very, very exciting, and you're never bored, even like if you're sitting
Oh yeah.
stuck in some kind of traffic, because you always have that, and you always can experiment, you always can, because when you look at everything being your energy, all of the drivers, all the cars, all the fumes, whatever. That's just an example, let's say. It just is a completely different kind of experience, you know. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I with the cars, it's interesting. Like for instance, many times this happens to me on the
Yeah.
road. That sometimes you come up with a very slow, like a truck or a big vehicle, and over and over again. And so I come up to that vehicle, and I'm so peacefully just driving behind it
Mhm.
with no I'm not in a hurry, I'm not angry, whatever.
Mhm.
But over and over again these guys pull over, and I and I'm not even sort of, I'm
Here
not even,
comes the queen.
there you are. Oh gosh. And it's amazing, my kids,
Mm.
they've this has happened with them in the car more than once, and Mom, I don't know how you do this. I mean, because I don't do anything, and I'm not even wishing for them to
Yes.
pull over. That's
Yeah.
the funny thing. So imagine,
Mm.
yeah, I've got an appointment and I have to get somewhere at a
Mhm.
certain time, but I'm not in a rush. I
Mm.
know I have to get there by that
Mm.
time. And so then there's this slow, whatever, big vehicle in front of me,
Yeah.
and okay. And then boom, there, it pulls over.
And lets you
Thank you.
pass.
And they pull over just to let me pass. It's not because
Yeah.
they were going to
Yeah.
leave the road. Then they come back
Yeah.
on again. And
Yeah.
it's this cooperative nature.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
being in cooperation rather
Mm.
than in conflict. And
Mm.
another thing I notice a lot, especially when I'm working very closely with clients,
Mm.
that especially when we have, for instance, retreats, I do these very personalized
Mm.
one-on-one retreats where we have 1, 2, 3 people maximum, so it's really, really
Mm.
very into
Mm.
everything.
Mm.
And then the weeks before and even during and
Mm.
after, then sometimes I wake up and I feel something in my heart. So
Mm.
whatever, it can be the person's fear or whatever. And
Mm. Mm.
in those situations, and I'm sharing this because people many times complain, oh, I'm so empathic, I feel
Mm.
people, and we all do that thing. You cannot switch off. You're going to
Mm.
become more and more empathic, but there are two ways of living it. One way is in conflict with it.
Mm.
Another way is being the
Mm.
alchemy pot, which is
Mm.
what we were talking about the other day. So when I feel whatever it is, so of course it's uncomfortable. Of course, I'd prefer not to feel that stuff.
Mm.
But if I'm feeling it, it's here. So what
Mm.
do? I just dive into it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I dive into it. And of course, there's nothing there
Mm.
for me to resolve myself. So then,
Mm.
because it's not mine, but it doesn't matter. I dive into it anyway.
Mm.
And as I dive into it, what I feel is just something fabulous. There's then this sweetness,
Mm.
this kindness, this softness that comes and
Mm.
sort of transmutes that thing.
Mm.
So the first thing I do, when I dive into it, is really become aware if there's
Mm.
anything in me creating that as well,
Mm.
or
Mm.
co-creating it
Mm.
somehow,
Mm.
right? So becoming aware of that, seeing if there's anything, and okay, if I find nothing, it's okay, and it just disappears. The thing is, of course, if I'm holding a retreat, it happens over and over
Mm.
again. So the only thing to do is keep on diving into it and
Mm.
transmuting it constantly. And
Mm.
it's just something so amazing, because
Mm.
basically we can do this
Mhm.
anywhere with any
Mhm.
situation. And
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if it's not ours. It really
Mm.
doesn't matter,
Mm.
because if you're feeling it, it becomes yours.
Mm.
Though, of course, it's not necessarily from any aspect or anything that you
Mm.
have not resolved. Okay. But if you're feeling it,
Mhm.
then it's come to you for a reason.
Mhm.
And what I find is that it comes to me because I am the alchemy pot, because I've done all of that for myself and with myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm available. Basically, I'm on earth available for that kind of alchemy. So it just sort of, comes my way, and that's it. And another thing is that I find, like you were saying, we can't change other people's point of view, other people's decisions or anything. But we can make a firm choice as to how we want to experience that relationship and where we want to be in terms of that. And recently I had a challenging situation with my son and his dad. And he was choosing to move 400 kilometers away. And my son is still 13, so he's still a kid. And to a very uncertain situation, etc. And I was feeling that, and I was sort of torn between feeling frustrated and angry and whatever, that I couldn't do anything about it, and on the other hand, knowing that all is well in all of creation, because I know that perfectly well. Actually, I'm very laid back with my children. I don't feel like what people say, a regular mother. So I'm here not to be there all the time. But on the other hand, I know that I'm also here in their lives to be that presence that they can sort of get something from when they want to, in terms of consciousness, where they can come and drink something different when they're available for that. But what I did in that situation was really very simple. So I knew I couldn't change the situation, but so I chose for the highest good of everyone, me, my son, his dad, everyone, I am gonna kill these demons, slay them like Kali. So I slayed the demons that were trying to afflict me in my own consciousness. And immediately the whole situation changed. So he's not moving anymore. His dad is talking to me like, best friends. And my son is calm because he wasn't okay with that situation. He was really very, very afraid of moving so far away. So that's why it was sort of hitting me so much, because he was in this conflict. And so the thing is, really, whatever is, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. So I'm saying, yeah, it was coming from my son. Doesn't matter. It was afflicting me. So I am the one who has to slay the demons.
And sorry, you go.
And it changed completely. And I didn't even, I had no idea that was a possibility. Honestly, for me, the change had already happened. I mean, I was, okay, I just have to accept this as it is. And eventually, help my son deal with the situation and feel more at peace with it. But then the whole thing changed. And that's it. It's basically, you are the alchemy pot. Take responsibility for whatever you're thinking, whatever you're feeling. It's you, because it's all our energy.
And we are, we are always going to be with ourselves forever, so this is what I say also, to the clients, that whatever you're feeling, whatever is coming at you and you don't want to look at, it's not going to go away until you alchemize it within yourself. And that's that, like you described the process beautifully, or whatever you call it, but it is, like listening to you, it's amazing how you found your solutions. And I'm finding that when we allow ourselves in this way, we ourselves find our own little niche creative solutions to all of these things. And this is the fun part, isn't it? This is the fun part.
And I'd never done the slaying the demons Kali thing. When it just came to me in that moment. Okay, so it's not for anyone else to use. It's just, I used it That it just came to me as a
Yeah,
solution in
yeah,
that moment. So it's not sort of like there's a
yeah.
recipe serves all.
No, no, there isn't. And the thing is, you don't need a recipe, because with that dynamic presence of the soul knows within that space, whether, and again, it doesn't matter whether it's your human self that expands and resolves, or whether there's bits and percentages. You see, these kind of things matter not, but we have to use the words. And there's two things that I wanted to say. That yes, we masters are here for a reason, and like you beautifully described that reason, because we are these alchemy pots. We do. And it's not that we are actually doing that on behalf of another person. Like how I'm understanding it now from what I experience, and these understandings continually evolve. And that's the exciting thing, is that I feel something in mass consciousness, let's say some stuckness or something. It becomes to me, it knocks on my awareness, knocks on my door, that is my awareness. I think, that's a little bit limited. That's very old. Yeah, I remember times when I used to feel and believe that, but I don't anymore. So, how do I actually break the walls of it? So then I go into and break the walls of it, because now from every situation, from every stuckness, and that's also with the clients, they come and they say, okay, this is where I feel stuck. I feel it, and then I find ways out, because from once you allow this soul to be present, this awareness, there is no, you can get escape out of any prison, because prison's this box, but soul lives out here. So you can find it, and you say, okay, try this. But it's not that you can do it for another person. You can actually, but when we alchemize this within our energy, it becomes part of the mass consciousness. And that's what we
Yeah.
are expanding. And then this formula, this template, this blueprint, where let's say something old came to me, I've alchemized it, it becomes part of mass consciousness. Once it's part of mass consciousness, it's available to every human being. And that is why you now see all over the world, things are opening up. People are finding solutions to things that were unsolvable. People are finding solutions to the conflicts that are ancient, not because something has changed there, but because people like you and you and you and you that are participating in these kind of things, that are doing this in your life, you are constantly in your way, in your unique way, you're constantly putting these templates, these blueprints, into adding them into mass consciousness, and then they become available. And it's not that another person will then do exactly as you, maybe they will, but they will then find, it's like all of a sudden, wow, look at this potential, I didn't know that before. And that's why we are now in such a different place than we were 20 years ago, because of people like us that have put all of these solutions into. That's all we need to do, really. So when this comes to me, it is mine, because I've made it. I've taken the template, old template from mass consciousness. I've created it within my energy, and I can then transform it and transmute it and alchemize it within my energy. And then that, how to do that, how it's been done, goes into mass consciousness. It expands mass consciousness. Other people absolutely then have access to that. So that's how we affect this change, but it's seamless, because we're just living our lives. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to, a person doesn't have to do any workshop, nothing. You're just constantly being this alchemy pot. So that's one thing. The second thing that I wanted to mention from what you said, me too, I've had Kali experiences, and I've realized that Kali, we've banished as a society, we've banished Kali, but Kali in nature is absolutely needed. Is that feminine destructive, gives birth, but it also destroys. So you have this continual cycle, like a forest, let's say forest is continually dying and being rebirthed. It needs this dying, because otherwise you just have old and stale. And then also there are parts of us where those parts, they never will change, or how can I explain, that need to be slayed, that need to be killed. And I didn't know that until I actually, like you, I had these experiences, and all of a sudden realized, wow, some things just need to be killed off, and they're finished, and no more. They don't get, like, it's not like we keep babysitting them. We babysit them for years and years and years, and all of a sudden you realize no more these
And it's not
demons.
aspects. It's really not
No, yeah,
aspects.
it's not. Yeah, it's some kind of, like, maybe, I don't know what you
It's
call them,
consciousness.
demons.
It's kind
Yeah,
of a stuck consciousness.
yeah, and it's not gonna, nothing's gonna happen with it, and it just has to be slain. So, but it again, it comes, like, don't try to do something from fear.
Yeah.
It comes when you need it. It comes when you're ready. It comes when you know how to do so. Always, it's this simplicity. Like, whenever you find yourself, wherever you find yourself, like, oh, lack of abundance, this and that, or or you're stuck in a relationship or something, you allow the soul, and then you allow that gentleness to deal with every single thing that it comes up
Yeah.
in that situation, and it brings the abilities to deal with it, and you just have to say yes, and then you have to take on those things, and you have to then act. You can't just be a passive. It's not,
Yes.
this relationship with the soul, it's extremely dynamic. You have to follow up on, it says, okay, you have to let this person go. You have to let that person go. Even then, maybe, like,
Immediately.
yeah, even maybe,
Immediately,
yeah,
preferably.
that's right. Maybe in 3 months' time they will come back. That matters not. But
Doesn't matter.
yeah, you keep having to act. And the thing is that, that from a human perspective also, it becomes easy, but you this life of flow is not because you don't face the challenges, and because you are able to really act on your love. You are able to do those difficult things that some people are never able to do, like
Yeah.
walk out of the toxic relationship, like let a person go, stop pampering to another person's victimhood. You that's why your life also becomes really wonderful, simplicity and flowing, because you have said no to things, and you have acted, you have moved, you have stopped believing someone, you have let people go, you have, and the thing is that it doesn't, you see, like, it doesn't really matter, was it their fault, was it your fault, was it whose fault, it matters not. It can be my fault, and even with that, I'm okay. If it's my fault, yeah, I'm okay with that, but I still need to move on, because my knowingness said we need to move on, and it's not
Yeah.
like it
There's
says,
no more guilt. The
that's
guilt is
right.
not there stopping you.
Yes, yes. And it is a wonderful freedom, but it is a freedom based on being able to do what other people that are not connected with the
Yeah.
soul find difficult. But you no longer, it's not that you don't feel sadness, you feel everything. You feel sadness, you feel grief, but you welcome these as beautiful part of richness of life. You feel all of these things, like, but underneath that, you feel this well-being. And even if something hard does happen or is happening, you know that it's just temporary, because then the next thing you will again go into that timeless, oh my gosh, that timeless, like, just when you're driving on this open road and there's the sunset happening and the birds, and oh my God, it is just like, and you feel so good about yourself, and it's like, I'm floating on the air,
Yeah.
that kind of feeling. And that is just all the time. And then
Yeah.
again, maybe you go into mass consciousness and some uncomfortable, but that's the thing, that everything you just accept, and it comes and you flow with it. It's like when you're this base of the river, like and the river just flows and flows around the stones, and all of it. It's just such a divine way of living, such a divine, but it's because you have done those difficult things, you have followed up, you have, when you feel, okay, I don't feel confidence, Like in the old days, for example, something would stop, you wouldn't do something because you didn't feel confidence. And you say, no, I choose confidence, and you do it.
Yeah.
And then I choose knowingness, and you do it. You have to keep choosing that other thing which before stopped you. And then you integrate both. You integrate the non-confidence and the confidence, and then it becomes not neutral, then it
Neutral.
becomes,
Yeah.
because duality is always that. We lived in duality, so everything was either this or that. So you have to be able to feel both. Like you jump from this one into this one, you realize both are yours. They're both the same energy, because before we played, you either go here or either go here. You realize, wow, I'm actually both. And sometimes you see them, okay, I'm this, but look at that other person. Look how confident they are. And maybe you feel jealous, maybe, but you realize, wow, what I'm feeling of them is actually me. That's my energy I'm feeling. So if I can feel their confidence, this feeling is mine. So all of a sudden, I own this. I'm confident, and realize, shit, yeah, I've got a choice to be here or here. So then, yeah, this game is now over.
Then
And
it
then
collapses.
that's
It sort
right.
of collapses.
That's right. It's no longer, and that's how you alchemize duality. And you can
Yeah.
do that on everything. You can do that, let's say, male or female. You can do that on patriarchal, like some people are still feeling that oppression, like there's so many women and men also, because patriarchy is not comfortable for either. It keeps people stuck. And you realize, wow, I'm both, I'm this and this. You feel it, and then they come together. And then you don't even have to really think, oh, I'm a feminine, I'm a masculine. It becomes really your whole. It becomes mute point. So it's all very interesting. Over to you. See, we
It
can
is.
talk.
And
We can talk a lot.
yeah, we could talk till
Yes.
sundown.
Yes.
That's why we'll do once a month and then sort of cut it into pieces. There were two things that were coming
Yeah.
up when you
Yeah.
were sharing that, and one of them is this knowing that nothing is ever missing. So like as you were saying, taking action also means being available to change habits. And like sort of people don't realize usually how stuck they are, like in the things they eat or the things they do on a daily basis. And this is more prevalent on daily normal habits. Like
it's always this
now,
normal daily life, isn't it?
there you are. Now imagine that you don't have those things on that day or whatever. How are you going to live that? Like you don't have those which you have considered staple foods, or you don't have the possibility to live that normal day that you usually did. So are you going to get angry, frustrated, feel there's something missing, do everything possible to get that thing that you are used to having, or are you gonna allow yourself to discover, oh, wait a minute, I've never tried this, let me try this. Oh wow, this is nice, this is tasty, this is more comfortable, or whatever. And I've noticed this in happening more and more and more. So my days are so unplanned, and of course sometimes I have to book something on my schedule and I have to write it down, otherwise I'm going to forget. Anyway, but the days are so unplanned that even the planned things get unplanned very fast. And it's this, because it's this flow is, then it becomes such a flow that it's just stronger than anything else. And so for instance, I started changing the way I shop. I don't really like going shopping. Going to the supermarket and that is sort of that, all of that light and it's not something I really like. I
No,
love being
yes,
out in the
yes,
open,
yes,
and that
yes.
I prefer going to an open market and see all of those colors
Yes,
and
yes.
stuff alive.
Yeah.
So I started going less and less to the supermarket, but also because I wanted to experience not buying so many packages and that,
Yes,
so much
yes,
stuff that's
yes.
packaged in plastic and that has changed everything. Like now, if I ever go to the supermarket, I am looking for
Mm,
whatever is in a carton box instead of
mm,
plastic and stuff. And so it becomes a really interesting experience. Why? Because then you realize, gosh, there's so much of everything that
mm,
people, it just gets us confused. I mean, what do you need
mm.
so many of these, each every single taste, each and every
Yes.
single everything. And you'd get,
Yeah.
geez, this is just something to confuse me. I don't
Yes.
need
Yeah.
all of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, okay, that brand, because there are very few,
Mm,
especially in Portugal, that brand has the one that it's cardboard. So I'm good. So there, I don't need to choose anything else than that. I'm going to get that brand and that brand. And so
mm,
the thing is, other than before, as many times I go into the
mm.
supermarket and I come up with much less than I intended
Yes.
to than the
Yes.
other way
Yes.
around.
Yes.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I look at the things, do I really need this? No, I don't really need it. And
Mm,
so it's changed the way I relate
mm,
to life, in the
mm-hmm.
sense that then what happens is that, for instance, food finds its way to my table
Mm,
in so many more magical ways. So then,
mm,
people, friends that have gardens or
mm,
fruit trees or whatever, come up and give me this. And I've
mm,
got loads of that in my own garden as well. So then
mm,
you realize I don't need to always have mangoes in the house, or
mm,
to
mhm,
always have
mhm,
bananas, or to always,
mhm.
you
Yeah.
start
Mhm,
becoming more flexible and
mhm.
realizing I
Yeah.
don't need to always have everything of everything, because
Mhm.
that was an illusion of lack, actually. The
Lack, that's
need to
right.
have everything, it's an
And
illusion of lack
control, and
and
control, isn't it?
control,
Yeah, because
really.
you
And
don't
so
feel safe. Yeah.
there you are. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
my days are so dynamic, in the sense that they keep on changing, in the sense
Yeah.
that I do not have routines.
Mhm, mhm,
I can't even figure out the way to have a routine anymore. It's just sort of
mm.
completely out.
Yeah.
But still, but still, there's more space and more leverage
Yes. Yes.
for less and less
Mm,
habit,
mm,
even so. And that is, wow, it's so amazing. It's like,
mm,
it's a permanent discovery of
mm,
flow, really. It's, you never know it,
mm,
because it presents itself in the moment
mm,
so
mm,
uniquely, you never know it.
mm,
So
mm,
it's really always a new experience. And then the other thing I
mhm,
wanted to touch on is relationships, because relationships
mm,
usually is an issue. So I wrote a book called Be Love Beyond Illusion back in 2011, 12. And it's
mhm,
been republished recently with some new chapters and
mhm,
that. And in there, I share that I actually,
mhm,
at some point, after my realization, whatever you
mhm,
want to call
mhm,
it, well, after realizing I am all of it,
mhm,
basically that's what it is, really realizing and owning that. um, and I was, after a year or so, a bit more, not having a relationship, I was choosing, okay, so what am I going to do? Am I going to have a relationship, not have a relationship, whatever? And I chose, yeah, I do invite a relationship into my life,
mhm, mhm.
but where we are not in a dependent kind of thing, where
Yes,
we
yeah.
don't really need each other
Mhm,
emotionally, anything. It's just a relationship to be lived in joy and expansiveness,
mhm,
where the same love that I live with my essence can be possible
mhm,
with
mhm,
another
mhm,
essence. So basically, because we are all the same source essence,
mhm,
it's very easy to understand that this is absolutely possible.
mhm.
Of course, then there's all sorts of hurdles to get past with the humans in the way.
Yeah, yeah. And
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 so what
this,
happened is,
yeah.
I did get into that relationship, and it evolved.
Yeah.
And at some point last year, it imploded. And the beautiful thing with that implosion was that it was so peaceful, so
Mm,
completely, impossibly
mm,
perfect, that what happened was an implosion of what we had built until then. But now we are still in a relationship though
Mm,
it is so completely different
mm,
to what we had initially
mhm,
envisioned,
mhm,
that it just keeps on getting better.
mm, mm.
And so, really, it's allowing ourselves to break the boxes, break the molds,
Break
break
all
the
of them.
beliefs, break
Yeah.
the habits all the time in every single situation,
Mm-hmm,
small and big.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. And you've said it so beautifully. And with this, with the relationship, for me too, like when you go into it and you think, wow, you have all these conditions. And for me, I've let all of the conditions go. And I'm just, when all of that process that were happening, there were a lot of breaking out, saying goodbye. And now I find
Yeah,
that there is actually a lot of coming back together again in a new way. And that's with all of the things, like with the ex, with siblings, with relatives, with friends. And it comes,
yeah,
and you can, there isn't anymore, in that process, somewhere in that decade of real intensity, when you are on your own and you have to spend a lot of time on your own to be integrating, as much as you can. But then this there comes this really easy going when you're like, yeah, nobody can really like feed on me, and I don't feed on anyone, so it's very, very easy going, and people just come and go, and I don't really have any more like judgments or rules, the kind of person that has to be this or that, or with
yeah,
a male female relationship. It's just like, oh, I'm open, and let's play with what happens. And there is no rules. So wow, we're here for together forever. That is just a silly thing when you consider yourself, I'm eternal. So
exactly.
like, so even like if it's a short, it doesn't mean that it's meaningless. It's because, like you said, everything has so much meaning, this simplicity. So, and like with your shopping and with your food, I'm finding that too, that everything seems so simple. Like if a normal person that is still in mass consciousness comes to my place and they open my fridge and stuff, I've got basic ingredients, but out of those ingredients, and like garden as well, and access to market and stuff, you can't go through those places when you realize, oh my god, why did I ever think I was not abundant? Because all of a
Yeah,
sudden you find yourself, I have so many choices, I can't even try everything as what is available, and I live in pretty remote place, so I can imagine people in where even more of this kind of stuff is available would say, oh my god. But like you said, I'm now very back to basics, and not because I'm afraid of non-organic, or it's just because you can feel the richness, and I
mm,
feel myself just enjoying preparing my food and allowing my
mm.
soul self to enjoy. And we make so many different things, and even if I try to make the same thing
The
again,
same.
it's not, and we keep experimenting, and like it seems like a simplicity, but it is so incredibly enriched simplicity. And that's why, like, those kind of noisy entertainments where there's all just these flashing lights and noise, for me now it's craziness. That it's some kind of craziness, because there's nothing enjoyable about those assaulting the senses with all those fake things, even like the nose, all of those perfumes that are just so
Yeah,
fake, like they're not pleasant to me, because I can smell the chemical composition, and it's
yeah,
not pleasant. I can smell, the alcohol, the this, and they're not pleasant,
that's true for me too.
compared to like the natural oils and stuff, which are just like,
Yeah,
you just want to, oh my gosh, I'm
it's
gonna follow you
exquisite.
forever,
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's
because you smell
exquisite.
so
It's like,
beautiful. That's
ooh,
it, yeah. And it's got this richness, and it's got the history. Like I can feel the how the flower was blooming, how it was swaying, in the wind, all of that comes through that essence, through that smell. So
Yeah.
so it's very different, or when, let's say, you have something artificial, and not again to judge it, but it's like with artificial, what I feel is the factory doing cloink cloink cloink, and it's not as pleasant for me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like the
I
same.
know,
Yeah.
totally.
And with the food,
I
the
feel the
same.
same.
Yeah. And it's like, for example, like for you go into much more lighter food, and just with the animals, because you feel the history of it, so you can't anymore participate in those, like you taste something and you sort of feel this awful factory kind of farming. You think it's
Yeah.
just not something that, it's not that, I do eat meat, but it's like I want to
It
be.
depends where it's coming from.
That's right. And how the quality of life of that, because you can
Yeah,
taste that. You can taste,
exactly.
and when you sort of can respect the animal, like then you can also feel it brings you the joy when it's alchemizing with you, and you can feel how it was enjoying its family, its own enjoyment of the sun and the moon, and all, and how it was smelling things and perceiving things. All of that is just such a different kind of experience. So what I find also, that the more I want that and I choose that, the more of that is available. So that's
Yeah.
why there is like an explosion of this kind of, and it's not from the old way of, we're judging and we're going to want to resolve and we have to go on campaign. No, but it's just this pure enjoyment, and in sharing this and
Yeah.
in enjoying, um and so, like everything just is so hard to explain, just how different your everyday life is. And yet from someone looking, they may say, oh my god, your life is boring, because you don't have those clunky noisy boom boom,
And rushing
oh
and,
my
and running
god.
around and
Yeah. And just the whole, this mass consciousness craziness, it just makes no sense. And like now what I've been feeling lately is this kind of structures, even like the banking, the sorry my
mm-hmm.
voice, because I've told you before that I've been singing loudly my opera singing in the car yesterday, so, so I forgot I've got this today, and I've lost a little bit my voice. But anyway, so I've been feeling how people are now, and we are able to really step out of these systems that have been for hundreds and thousands of years, this banking system. Like, why do we need banks to be an intermediary, between our own values, our own money, our own, all of these kind of in between
Yeah.
things. It's like when in religion we used to think, oh, we need a priest to be an intermediate between the human and the soul. No,
And yeah.
and all of these kind of old ancient institutions are falling apart slowly, but they do feel like they have this grip on you, but when you realize, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, this is just my energy, I constructed this within me. So it's not that I have to go on the street and protest against the government and against the institutions or whatever. I just have to feel them within me, allow my soul self to be present, like you explained so beautifully, and alchemize, see how I can love, because all of this is also my energy. I've constructed this. I've constructed the banks. I've constructed the governments. I've constructed the bad governments. I've constructed all of that. It's in my energy. It is my energy. So I love it. I love it. It doesn't matter how much you perhaps hate, or someone has done some injustices to you.
Yeah.
It's in your energy. You love it. You allow it. And even there's a resistance to loving it, you allow it. You be with it and see how it starts changing. And then, like you said, you really do find ways to live your life as an embodied master in this richness and simplicity, while living next door to this. And even like with shopping, you just realize these things that you didn't realize before. Maybe they weren't available. Maybe
Yeah.
the space has expanded. You've expanded the space, but all of a sudden you find that, wow, I can go shopping at 8 at night, there's no one there. I find like I've changed because I'm not caught with those Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and
Yeah.
any of those patterns. All of a sudden I have space to move. I have things that I can do to really make my life much more enjoyable, and I can avoid so much of this. Like I can avoid the bad, really bad 9 o'clock traffic or whatever, because I never go anywhere at that time, because I either
Yeah.
go before or after. And then people all go out for the weekend, and I'm normally going the opposite way on the, you see the busy people going that way, and I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go on the empty side of the road, so you and again it comes back to this, because your values completely, it's not like that you do force yourself into anything. It is like your values completely change, and all of a sudden, my
Yeah.
God, I don't need this. And even you
That's it.
stop spending much money, because you, like, perhaps, initially, especially when you haven't organized yourself without having to go to job, Monday to Friday, and maybe you can go back to job, depends on what your situation is, if you have children, whatever, it's very different. But within every your daily life, you find ways. Your job changes. All of a sudden at your job you have much more freedom. All of a sudden you get a raise, or like, it's incredible that all of those, what you thought that I was imprisoned. Let's say I thought that I was imprisoned by something outside. All of a sudden, your awareness goes through those things, and you realize, wow, this too is my creation, this too is my energy. And as I allow the presence of my soul to be there, whether it's a job, whether it changes in incredible ways.
It
Or
does.
you get that, okay, no, I need to leave. And even if you don't have anyone, you have anything, you think, oh shit, how am I going to do a living? And there is a little bit of a challenge there, because we are dependent on this institutionalized life so much, that it takes a while before you learn how to sail outside of that, and trust yourself, and find new ways of that money flow and abundance flow and stuff. And especially if you haven't, for example, worked for yourself, you do find, based on your situation, but it can be scary. And in that way also you face the biggest of fears, which is survival. Every one of us
Yeah,
has to face that fear, and you have to walk through
definitely.
it, and you have to feel it, because that is one of those big stoppers that keeps you imprisoned within the
Mm-hmm.
mass consciousness and the limitation. So everyone will face that somewhere along the line, and you just walk through it. It's not pleasant, and you walk through it, and you breathe, and you just always just keep choosing love, keep choosing self-love, keep choosing this life, keep choosing yourself. And you walk through it, and you work through it, and all of a sudden you start seeing all these potentials, all these, wow, like you said, I didn't know that was there. Yeah, now it's there. And all of a sudden you have time, and wow, I can do this. And all of a sudden there's a requirement for your skills. All of a sudden what you can do is popular, and you also have the courage to try these things,
Yeah.
and the confidence, and all of these things, to do things that you never thought. And all of a sudden you have this respect for yourself. And all of a sudden, then as you have respect for yourself, all of a sudden more new opportunities come up. It kind of all works in this way. But all along you have to face and transform and alchemize all of those things that you've escaped, because everything that you've ever felt or experienced, even in this lifetime, comes all of there's nothing that comes to you that you don't already know, like these raw materials, the feelings, the emotions, the relationship issues, all comes because it's all you. And this is your world, this is your raw materials, out of which you alchemize, you transform, and you create the new life. You allow the new life to be created, just, but it seems like seamlessly by itself.
Yeah, it seems, but of course, as you say, as you're sharing brilliantly, it really takes grit, basically
Yeah,
grit.
yeah, yeah,
Keep to it,
yeah,
never give up.
yeah.
Really know you're on track because you're that's what you're here for. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, as you
Mm-hmm.
keep on doing that, suddenly you realize there are no more problems. Suddenly
Yes.
you realize you've got endless
Mm.
solutions. Like suddenly you
Yes.
realize your
Yes.
creative power, like all of a sudden
Mm.
you have solutions for the smallest things that you didn't
Yes.
even know how to do
Yes.
or whatever. And then the
Yes.
solution just pops
Yeah.
up. And so there are no more problems. You really
Yes.
no longer see problems.
No.
They just
No.
disappear.
Yeah.
And another thing I'd like to
Yeah.
share was an experience I had with my
Yeah.
neighbors,
Yeah.
because you can love them and
Mm-hmm.
still be firm and assertive
That's
and
right. Yeah.
and certain abusive kind of
Mm-hmm.
behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, last year there was this situation
Mm-hmm.
where um, the neighbor started making a sort of a platform on top of the
Mm-hmm.
roof, which was totally into my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were very close,
Yeah.
the house
Yeah.
beside, and they could basically look into my bedroom,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
with this roof thing. And the place where I'm living
Mm-hmm.
is my mother's got two homes, so I live in one and she lives in
Mm-hmm.
another. And
Mm-hmm.
so she went to speak to the neighbor and said,
Mm-hmm.
have you got a license to do this thing here,
Mm-hmm.
this platform here? And the guy was really angry and sort of really pissed off, and responded very aggressively. And she was very calm. She said, yes,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just asking because I'd rather you not do this here. And he just didn't give any heed. Well, then kept on going with it. And then she went to speak
Mm-hmm.
to the father, because this is the older son who lives on the top floor,
Mm-hmm.
and the father and the mother. And they were, oh, he does what he wants, and so on and so forth, and she asked again politely, so could you please stop this, because we're not okay with that situation. And then so they didn't stop. So then I sent an email to the municipality, to the guy who takes care of that. Next day, like it was immediate. Next day, the inspector went there. They had to
Mm-hmm.
pay a fine, and they
All
were
right. Yeah.
super pissed off with
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Like everyone in the
Yeah.
neighborhood was saying, you're witches, you're this and that. But we didn't hear that. I mean, I know
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
person
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
and said and that, but we were like, the result is they stopped the thing and never did anything like that again.
Yeah.
And the result is I can love
Yeah.
them anyway. That's
Yes.
it's the amazing
Yeah.
thing is, when you have to be
Yeah.
firm and
Yeah.
say, okay, that's where my
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
But you don't have to get angry. You don't
No.
have to get
No.
into an argument.
Mm.
And sometimes you might even sort of pretend to argue, but not feel angry
Yes.
inside,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
in a sense
Yeah.
that say, look, no, do
Yeah.
not do this.
Yeah.
And but you can still be
Mm.
loving those
That's
people
right.
anyway, like,
Yeah.
because they are your fellow humans here on earth. They're going through their own ordeals, they're having their own experiences, and they're
Yeah.
entitled to them, and that's fantastic, and they're beautiful people anyway.
Mm.
But of course, when there is trespassing and abuse on your energy, on
Mm.
your space, you also have to take action. It's
That's
not
right.
like you're going to be
Yes.
sitting like a saint
Mm.
in your living room,
That's
just
right.
chanting om and never
Yeah.
saying anything
Yeah.
to anyone.
Yeah. No.
because
And
because you're
absolutely.
saintly,
Yeah.
because sometimes we also get into this idea, now I'm sort of, because
Mm.
uh, I'm a realized master and I have to sort of be nice to everyone.
Mm.
Sometimes you love them, and that's sure, you never really feel hatred or anything for anyone. The thing is, when you have to be firm, you have to be firm. And this is the same, and it works exactly the same way as we were sharing before about slaying the demons inside, about slaying the old stuck beliefs that are not even an aspect anymore. It's exactly the same thing. There are moments when we have to be so firm
Yes.
inside, and it's
Yeah.
not out of
Yeah.
spite, it's not out
Yeah.
of hatred, it's not out
Yeah.
of rejection.
Yeah.
It's just, it's
Mm.
over,
Mm.
finished, no more
Mm.
of this game. And that's it. So basically realizing the balance, because it doesn't have to take you out of your
Mm.
balance.
No.
You
Yeah.
don't need to get all, whoa, all
Mm.
worked up and like then say bad things about people and that.
Mm.
No, I mean, this happens. You fix it, in a sense, you settle things, and that's
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just keep on flowing. Fantastic. Are they saying stuff about you? Well, if they are, what does it matter? It doesn't matter at all.
Mm. Mm.
Then it's happened over again, over and over, that you have to do something for them and they have to accept your help for some reason. And then they are, oh gosh,
Oh
now
yeah.
how
Yeah.
can I demonize this
Oh,
person?
yeah. 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 I can relate. I can absolutely relate to that, and I absolutely agree. For me as well, like I've had quite a few encounters, actually a lot of encounters like that. And like you said, you can be in your loving space and you move on very quickly without all of that after, and it's not emotional. But you do have to. You do have to take care of your boundaries, like you said, the trespassing, and the trespassing is huge if you live among people, especially if you
Yeah,
live in town. It's huge because people feed. And then when you realize that they need that food, and you can have compassion to them, that because you were also once part of that system, it's not that I don't have compassion, but you have to be firm to say, yes, you're not feeding here. And the thing is
exactly.
that because there are more of us, it is now different time that other people now have to learn that there are different kind of people among them, people that want space, people that choose space, people that i I have a right to my space. And you have to learn, as when you come to an adulthood, to perceive, because I'm clearly showing you with my body language, no, don't come to me because I am in my space right now.
Yeah,
You have no reason, but people just do it because they want to feed you. Feel their
of
tentacles
course.
trying to go into your solar plexus, and you realize that there's no need to feel bad about them or about you, but you have to just like, no, they have to learn that no is a no, and then respect also to yourself, to them, and to
We don't
me.
need to make a big deal
No,
of it. It's
no,
just really simple.
no big deal, but very decisive. It's like,
Yeah.
and it can feel like, for a while there, while I was kind of learning this, because I was this nice person, it felt like I was the least. It was funny because all of a sudden I'm saying, to myself, wow, I'm allowing the soul, this divine part of me, but I'm becoming a very unnice person. Like I'm probably the least nicest person in the shop. I go to the shop and everyone else is so kind to me, but I'm not kind to them. I'm actually quite rude to them. But the reason why I'm rude is because they're constantly overstepping that boundaries and that space, and they don't realize it because for them is normal, because they're in their feeding. But we are no longer feeding, you see, and they have to learn that too.
Yeah.
Otherwise you are appearingly rude to them, and it's not like some kind of fighting match, but you become, that intolerant master. You really become that.
Yeah.
Have to, for survival, because unless we do this, it's intolerable for us to be
That's
there,
the
and we're all
point.
going to
It
go.
becomes, you
Yeah.
can't stay here if
No,
you aren't firm like that.
that's
It's
right.
just not possible.
I'm giggling because, all our non physical friends, Yeshua is saying, yes, yes, you can't stay unless you do this. That's what he's saying.
It becomes unbearable,
Yes,
definitely.
yes.
There are things we have to adjust.
And people have to adjust also, because it's not
Yeah.
anything unreasonable. It's not unreasonable. And you do for a while. it seems like you do for a while there. There is a period where you feels like you're going into conflict, and be
Yeah.
okay with that, like into conflict with others, because all of a sudden you are creating different kind of boundaries. And
Yeah.
everyone that is in your life, whether they're in the shop, whether they're anywhere, whether they're your neighbors, whether they're your loved ones, they need to start um, relating to you in a different
In a
way.
different way.
And that can be stressful, like, 'cause some people
Yeah.
will fight. Oh my gosh, I must say, I had, like, let's say maybe 9 years ago, when I really started doing this boundary thing with some people. Gosh, it was a big, because I would have to just get up and be rude and walk to the toilet and close the door,
Yeah.
because they just wouldn't stop talking, and then the next day again, and I would just say, stop, like, leave me alone. And they just wouldn't, because they just, I need to feed on you. And I would just get
Yeah.
up. That was at my work, and I needed to
Yeah.
not say
I
anything,
had
just
that.
get up and walk to the toilet and close the door, wait until they left. And the next day they would start again, get up, walk to, there are things like that you have to do, because you do really do start doing things very, very differently to what your uh, kind parents taught you is the etiquette, like, because you go into you and you go out of these realms of proper behavior. And it's not that you become some kind of rebel on pointless things, not at all.
Yeah. No.
These are all the things that are needed for your well-being, that are needed for your survival, that are needed for your space, and just for pure enjoyment. You have a right to enjoy your life, to enjoy yourself, to enjoy your space. You have a right to say no. Nobody has a right to come and suck off you, and as soon as, when you first start allowing those beautiful energies to be part of you, there's a lot of people that want a piece of that. And they would just,
Yeah.
but the thing
They
is
don't
that
want to do the work,
that's
but they
right,
want a piece of
of
it.
you. And what you're teaching them is, no, 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 you do the work, and they're accessible to you, but in the society that teaches that kindness is feeding, very often you realize that what is supposed to be kind is actually really just feeding and,
A lot of
and
it.
enabling bad habits and enabling toxic relationships. So
Yeah.
very often you feel like yourself, oh my God, I'm not a kind person. And this is the thing, when you have that compassion for yourself and you realize, maybe I'm just not seeing, and it's okay if people are upset with me. You become okay with those kind of things. Especially, I find, as a woman, I was so uncomfortable. There are some of the things that are so uncomfortable, like standing up for yourself, saying no, being okay if people are upset with you, because they will be upset with you, because
Oh
they can
yeah.
no longer feed off you. So there are a lot of things like that you do experience. But Jesus, they make you feel self-empowered, make you feel like, oh my God, it feels really good to actually say no, and to actually then go through those feelings of, I feel so bad, I shouldn't, and then do whatever you
Yeah.
need to do, but don't give in. It's like, if it's this your boundary, this is your boundary, and next time you'll see it will be much easier, and you stop feeling that guilt, like you talked about, that guilt and shame. You realize,
Yeah.
wow. And it's not, you're not actually asking anyone any unreasonable things, no unreasonable things. And yet sometimes you really have to be unkind, because you are just so firm. And it's like, no, you can't do this. And
And then
people
it
do.
really
Yeah.
changes. It
Yes.
changes, right? Because
Yeah.
like now I experience mostly there are very kind people, and
Yes. Yeah.
everywhere we
Yeah.
go, people
Yes.
then become different because you've
Yes.
done that
Yes.
enough to
Yes.
show how energy is supposed to serve
That's
you.
right. And I think, like, then your energy changes from that, I allow abuse and I invite abuse, and
Yeah,
then they
it
feel it as well.
shifts.
It shifts, and either they don't see you or they go if they don't not compatible, and you just meet those people that are compatible with this new,
Yeah.
or whether there's enough of this info now in mass consciousness because you've added it, that all of a sudden people, because things change, because all of a sudden you have these groups of people, introverts and blah blah blah. But it's not even whether you're extrovert and introvert. It is just that you naturally, when you are in this, these labels are misleading, but having introverts have their rights actually works for you, because then people all of a sudden now, oh yeah, this person needs a bit more space. But 10 years ago, it wasn't acceptable, these kind of things. People, and there are some societies where like people are just so involved with each other's lives and their neighbors' lives, and talking about them. So those kind of energies are you have to be extremely boom 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 to
very consistent,
yes,
basically,
to cut through,
so that then it shifts. If you're
yeah,
not consistent, it's like sort of a seesaw and you're always going
yeah,
back and forth. It has to be consistent
consistent,
over and over again,
yeah,
so the shift really happens.
that's right,
Because
yeah.
otherwise it's just sort of, it seems to be the motor is starting to
That
work,
you're
but
undecisive. You're undecisive,
there you
and
are.
your energy says that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that if the shift is really, if what anyone listening is looking
Yeah.
for is a real shift, you have to work with shame. Realize, because
Yeah.
shame is the thing that gets also there, like we feel ashamed to express in front of certain people, or to I don't know, to do this or whatever needs to be done. Shame and guilt work together, but I find like in public spaces that the shame thing gets in the way a lot of us being firmly assertive towards what we allow and don't.
And also, like the mass consciousness, the old mass consciousness says that only certain kinds of people are allowed certain privileges, you see.
Yeah.
That is just so strong. So let's say if you're a certain type, then you can do certain things.
Behave in a certain way.
That's right. And allow yourself to be a certain way. But if you are, let's say, if you're over a certain age, or if you're a certain class, or if you're a certain
social
gender
status, whatever,
or color or whatever, or no, you're not allowed that. You have to be small and miserable, and, you're not allowed to be flamboyant and allow yourself this and allow yourself that. So these are the things that you have to break through. You have to melt those patterns within you, and they're very strong. But that's why people just keep going round and round and round, because these patterns are so strong. So don't beat yourself up, just realize, wow, these are ancient things that are,
be gentle.
That's
be gentle.
right. Yeah. Because like even, in the old days when they had kings and queens, and a person wasn't even allowed, if you were just a little person, you weren't even allowed to own land. You were just a slave,
Yeah.
And it's all coming
you just
from
paid
that.
Tax.
Yeah. And now it's with the tax. But yeah, so there are so many of these ancient things that entrap you in this giving yourself away to something outside of you, and that outside of you giving you permission to do whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and the outside of you feeding off of you too.
Yes. And you realize, oh my God, and you are not only patted on the back that you are allowing others to feed, but you are made to feel shame and guilt if you don't allow others to feed off you. So when you start taking back that, you will feel shame. That's guaranteed. You will feel guilt. That's guaranteed, because they are those tools that keep that entrapment, that keep
mass
pattern.
consciousness in place, basically.
That's right. So you have to learn to deal with them. However, and you will find and know also, like for me, many times what helped me is just to realize, look, there are other people like me, and every single one of them had to deal with this, or no one gets away with it. Like if you're breaking through mass consciousness, out of mass consciousness, these are the materials that hold it. So, if someone says to you, oh no, didn't have to deal with that at all, they're bullshitting. They're still stuck in mass consciousness.
That's true.
That's the thing.
Totally.
Because if you've come out, all of those things. Very intimately shame. Very intimately guilt. Very intimately survival fears. Very intimately any fear, because you have dealt with it. That's, and now you're out of it. So it's not that because you haven't, like this getting out of it is because you can deal with all of it. And that's it. You accept all
from
of it.
From a space of compassion,
That's
of
right.
absolute compassion. And I believe also one obstacle that people might feel and usually feel is this balance between being firm and assertive and seeming like a real whatever you want to call that. Son of a bitch, whatever. And on the other hand, being gentle with yourself, knowing that this has to be done. So this balance between the gentleness and the assertiveness is maybe what is separate and needs to come together, because it's not separate. Within the space of compassion, assertiveness and gentleness are together. And this is strange for the mind, because in duality, these seem like opposing forces. And they are not. They are one thing. This is really a thing to look at. Each one, realize the assertiveness is essential if you want to be gentle. You cannot live a gentle life if you are not assertive
and decisive.
Basically, and decisive, and
a son of a bitch. But you're
and determined. Determination is key. I mean, where do you want to be? We have to be totally determined to live this life.
Committed. That otherwise commitment to self.
Exactly. That's what I mean. That's exactly. Commitment. Otherwise, it's easy, even when you are fully aware of all of this, to slip. Of course, easily you will slip back into your balance, but it's easy to slip. I mean, mass consciousness is always here, because we are not living in a temple, I don't know where. We are living here amongst everyone. So it takes such a complete commitment, like no doubt commitment.
On ongoing basis. And like, for example, let's say you have this amazing experience one day, let's say in the morning, and you're so integrated and so peaceful and stuff, and then you think, wow, from now on I'm going to feel this. No, the next day, the next hour, maybe you can start feeling something from the mass consciousness. So you over and over, you keep choosing.
Constantly,
you keep choosing.
Yeah,
and it's easier and easier and easier. And like, I don't know, maybe, in 10, 20 years time, we will be talking about different things, and we will, because, and this is one of the things also, you embrace this unknowing, because like before, the mind would say, wow, once I'm realized or whatever, I will know everything. But actually it's the opposite. If you ask me
nothing.
And if you ask me, what am I going to be like in 1 year's time? I have no idea. And that's a bloody good thing,
It is, isn't it?
It's wonderful that I have no idea, because all of these experiences, because you really have such incredible experiences, just, oh my God. Like on insights, when everything is just boom, 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 like all these sparks of aha moments, you can have that. So to have that within a year, I have no idea what all of that, what I'm still going to experience, is going to make me like, how it's going to change.
And each moment is so unique. It's just that moment. You're not going to seek to live the same moment over and over again, because that each moment that comes is so special in itself
Yes,
that you
yes,
don't need to be wanting to
yes.
live the same thing over and over again.
No,
So
and
you know
yes,
nothing.
yeah, and even if you would, because in that moment, if it is so beautiful, I'm thinking, oh my God, I want this to go on forever, isn't it? Sometimes,
Yeah. But then you realize,
yeah, the
okay, it's
next,
done. Let's move
that's
on.
it. Yeah, the next,
It
yeah,
is, isn't it? It's
yeah,
just
yeah,
not holding on to anything, not even
yeah,
to these amazing, like, it's just like everything is absolutely perfect.
yeah,
And in the past, we would want to keep that
forever.
framed
Yes,
forever, just like that. And
yeah,
it's knowing that it's such a freedom to be able to let go of that
mm-hmm,
because the
mm-hmm,
moment has passed,
mm-hmm,
and feel so grateful that you can do that.
mm-hmm,
I mean, that you are in such trust
mm-hmm,
that you can let go of that perfect moment and know that
mm-hmm.
everything is okay
Yes,
all the time, no matter what you're
yes,
living. Even if a
yeah,
few moments from
mm-hmm,
then, it sort of gets a little bit challenging
yeah, yeah,
and it sort of doesn't seem so
yeah,
perfect as that other moment, but it's okay anyway
mm-hmm,
because
yes,
there's more of that and of
yes.
whatever you don't even know.
Yes. There's just this vast endlessness of you, that
Yeah.
you can keep allowing. And this is the really the amazing, like there's so many aspects of this, like points of view that you can discuss forever, isn't it? Like we talk about this, oh, we can just put one word and we can talk about it forever because there's so many different sort of views. But I would sort of like to invite our
There are a few
audience.
comments here
Yeah,
from
yeah,
Katerina saying here about going into the shops. Lately in the shops, I need to
yes,
go to get some things. People are rude and question everything I ask or why I ask. It's been challenging to accept that it's
yeah,
not mine, but it always affects me a bit. So she says, I feel like in my group of people, I can make that block of being assertive and saying enough is enough and be reassured. But lately in the shops, it's been a challenge. Like, so there's the
mm,
moment to embrace that and really be with that discomfort and
mm,
really being with that. If you don't feel okay with it, just be with that.
because sometimes you will find that other people will take on the role of your aspects of unintegrated
Yeah,
aspects, and especially when you are deeply into that integration process, your aspects will challenge you big time. They
all
will
sorts of
keep,
ways.
yeah, in all sorts of ways, and they know you intimately. They know exactly which buttons to
The
press.
triggers.
Yes, and they will keep pressing them and pressing them until they see that you
until
are a
love
master.
is
You are a
until
master.
love is
Yes. Yeah, and what you do is just realize that, okay, so I've entered a certain period where there is something that is coming for an integration, and this is showing itself that I have challenges in the shop. When I go to the shop, I will just keep breathing, and then you become aware, you realize, okay, so maybe it is something that I am doing, something how I'm acting. Then you look at that and you look at, is it, in a joyful way, in a playful way, is it aspects? Because there is not one formula. There is so many
yeah.
different, and normally when something's happening, it's not just one thing. There are lots of things because you're such a multidimensional being. So
Yeah.
breathe, allow. When you are in that anger or whatever, breathe through that. Breathe through that frustrating feeling, and you'll see that's when then all of a sudden there's an opening. And whether you are surrounded by those people or not, it matters not. You just keep breathing. And it's so simple and yet so hard to do in those moments. And that's when the change will start. And also that, wow, even this shall pass, because there will be some richness in this, something that you will collect the wisdom the knowingness, the wisdom that you will collect from this experience. But only you can know, you see, and this is where you also are developing your own trust in your own knowingness. Because let's say in the past you can go to someone and say, oh, is this my aspect, or is this my this, or is this my that? But we are here to, for our own self awareness. So you get into that space where you know, is this my aspect? Is this my past? Is this just someone in the shop wanting to feed? You see, because this is the mastery where you become so aware of all of these parts, and you develop these abilities and skills within you to be aware and to know, yeah, this is my aspect. You see, without having to then ask someone else, oh, is this true? You see, that's what we are becoming, masters of self, where in these situations. And sometimes it can take a while, because some of the, and that's fine too. It's an adventure. Take it from, like, rather than, okay, this is something that I have to fear, now I'm going to avoid the shop. It's like, no, I am a master. I breathe in. Now I go in with a different kind of attitude. I allow my soul to be present and see what happens. And you keep breathing, and you keep standing on your ground, and you keep realizing if there's something that perhaps you are triggering in others, you change that behavior. Oh, oops, what was me? Oh, it was all my fault. Oh, interesting. And you move on. You see, and this is another skill that you do, that, yeah, because during this whole process, you integrate all of those bad things that you think saw in others also in yourself. So all of a sudden it's like, shit, I was a drama queen. Shit, I was a toxic person in a relationship. So you need to find ways to deal compassionately with those kind of realizations also, because you have to integrate your shadow. And shadow has a lot of good things, like these abilities to say no if you're a kind person. So then your shadow holds the ability to be firm, the ability, because you've been suppressing that, it's in your shadow. But shadow also holds those things that we didn't want to see in ourselves, meaning the drama queen, the toxic person, the manipulative person, because when you're walking out of that duality, we were all playing in these things with duality. It was ours. We co-created it. It was part of our responsibility also. So when you see those kind of things you have in yourself, you then also learn how to deal with unpleasant things that you recognize in yourself, and you bring that compassion and you bring the self-love. Because as a human being in duality, you don't know how to do this. You don't know how to have compassion and unconditional love for your ugly bits. And this too is a huge part of this journey, part of this step, that you realize, that you allow, that how you're going to handle when you realize that you were toxic. And I'm not saying this person that's asked this question, but all, like I'm looking at myself in the mirror, because that's when I looked. It's like, oh my God, I'm a toxic person. I behaved in this way. I was really mean. I've abandoned this person. I've disappointed, like, we've been that. And
really knowing that I've abused, I've done this, I've done, knowing it.
No, feeling it in yourself,
owning it.
Yes. And that is also that another skill that you learn, how to just, wow, how interesting. You feel it, you allow it. And that's when you really start to actually, you experience the unconditional love of your soul. Is when you own these kind of ugly parts of yourself. Because before, it's easy to accept yourself. Oh, I've been a loving person. You don't need unconditional for that. But when you see the ugliness of you also, that's when you really realize and start appreciating and knowing what the unconditional really means. Because before you didn't know it. And all of a sudden you see the value of these ugly parts of yourself, how much they actually carried for you, of this ugliness that you didn't want to see and accept, and what a great service they were. And also that they are also your energy, that you also allow them to come home, to come to the I am, to come into this unconditional acceptance. And that incredibly changes you, though. It's those kind of experiences that leave such a huge mark on your human self that you are never the same again. And this can happen just you sitting on some bench somewhere, and someone looking at you may just not see anything, and yet this huge universe changes. You've like stepped into another universe when you realize this kind of unconditional love has happened while you were sitting on that little bench, or somewhere, waiting for a bus. And if this has happened inside of you, so it is quite incredible. So don't look at this as an opportunity to these incredible transformations that you can experience for yourself. Oh.
Actually, I would go so far as to say that compassion resides in the dark side.
Yeah.
Because that side is the one that has held every piece of ugliness that we could not tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, as we start bringing it forth and accepting it from our soul, then we realize we become more and more compassionate, because compassionate was just dark. It was stuck. Basically, all of that compassion that it took our darkness to hold all of that there, as it starts collapsing, we really, really realize compassion. Because it's just, many times there's this idea, that's the light, that the light is the unconditional love, is the compassion. But honestly, actually, isness is unconditioned and unconditional. So really what resides in the dark is the compassion itself. And
That's
it's just
beautifully
not
said.
something the mind can conceive, is it?
No. And it is all of these, experiences that we don't welcome that actually gives us the most. And before we go on, because it's going to be nearly 2 hours, so I think we might have to finish now. For all of the participants, our next sessions were not going to be this long. We thought, okay, we're going to do about 2 hours the first time. Now, if you have any questions, please do type them up. But we're sort of still looking at, Tanya and I were looking at how we're going to run this monthly. So there was one idea to perhaps, create like a more private Facebook page, and we have more discussions, and then also to have people coming live on the show, because now when there's two of us, for me, it's easier to do the tech things behind. But that would mean in certain places that a form will have to be signed. So, a release form, I believe in Europe, it is a requirement. So there are all of these things. So if you have any ideas, like if you've participated in this show, and even if you watch it later on YouTube or on our Facebook pages, or you can send either of us a private message, if you have some suggestions, because we are very, very open. We want to keep
to different formats,
and we want to keep this open and changing and flowing to fit the requirements of that time, so it may change every month, but also we would like your feedback, and please, yes, please give us our feedback. And if you would like this to change into a format where we invite each of you, give you, so you can actually come live and have a discussion. So yeah, please do engage, because we would like this show to be a much more, rather than just us being here and us two talking, to be a much more, we've come into a different kind of space now. So we would like to be much more interactive. So use any means, either of us, that you would like to. And let's have a look if we have any. I don't think we have any more questions. That's it. But over to you, Tanya, if you would like to say.
Okay, so it's been just beautiful. This first
Yes.
time we decided to go for around 2 hours so we could share a bit more of what it's been like. And of course, there's so much more to share anyway.
Yeah.
And really, it's a very open-ended kind of thing, which as Alexis is sharing, is we're open to suggestions as to how to make this, or we could even have a live and then a private kind of thing separately, or
Yeah.
whatever. I know we're open to new ways of sharing, living in the flow. For all of those who are watching and who are really committed to that, and we know how challenging it is. So that's why we have come together to do this sharing, because it's enjoyable, because we love doing it. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
and and because I mean, we can assist in some way just by sharing these experiences, and it makes a difference to to be gentler, to be softer, to be kind to yourself, basically. And this is something that we need to keep on reminding ourselves about, because the world that we have known has become a very harsh place. But for it to become gentler, we have to become gentler ourselves, in ourselves, with all of us, inside and of course
Yeah,
outside.
yeah.
There's no way it can't be both ways.
Exactly. And
It
when
has
we
to be both
and when
ways.
we are living in this way, there are incredible rewards. We don't anymore live in a harsh, like I don't live in a harsh world at all. Like I can
Not
get
at all.
touched
Not at
by,
all.
maybe if I go on Facebook, maybe certain article touches me or something, and I feel that energy. And then I have to do what you've so beautifully described before, alchemize. But my world is extremely sensual.
It's
Um,
loving,
it's
joyful.
loving, and the whole world can be going through the certain, like I give this example. I've not had to wear a mask once. I haven't had been any restrictions by COVID, and like, because it's just like I chose it. No, I said no. I choose experience different, and then the way I move, like where I go, where I travel, I just naturally avoid things like that. It's like with the storm, you can have these huge storms, and
Yeah.
they will be, because we are no longer those kind of guardians or energy holders that they were. Some people, if they're, for example, still in the light worker, and it's beautiful to be a light worker, because you're learning how to work with light and energy. But there comes a point where you step out of that role and other people move in, and you no longer, for example, are playing with the weather to say, oh no, weather, you can't come with a storm, because the weather will do what it needs to do to
Yeah.
cleanse. And if the houses, unfortunately, if the houses are broken, people do create their own reality. And this is another one of those where you have to be very firm, because you realize, wow, I have to stand in my own power. But you yourself avoid this, and
Yeah.
each person who will need, because they also have a soul, and they're dancing with their soul and making the choices, and they will also come to this place where they too have to take responsibility. You see, like living on earth, it's a privilege, and yet from the mass consciousness, it hasn't been looked at that. It's like as if it's a right,
Yeah.
and it's that whole old energy of we're just going to chomp everything, and it's not going anywhere. That so people who are still in that, they have to wake up to, it's precious, my life is precious, what I've been given by nature, by myself, and my energy is precious. I have to
Yeah.
honor it. I have to create in a different way. But if they're not willing to, then you have to let
Then there
them
has to be
go.
storms and
Yeah,
other stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
because in the life that we're creating, it doesn't include, a new earth doesn't include people that haven't changed to realize how everything is sacred. They don't have access, they don't see
Honored.
it. That, yeah, and so they have to go through that, or they will disappear, unfortunately or fortunately, out of your reality,
Mm.
because and this is what is happening, and it will happen more. You will see it. And the thing is, like, it really is up to every human being, whether they're adult, child, because nobody is new. Like, they all have many lifetimes. They all are soul beings. They all have I am that I am. What their story is, what their play is their right to choose. And what your story is, your right to choose. And if there are certain things you don't want in your reality anymore, alchemize and transform them and say no. And some demons have to be slayed. Invite Kali from your shadow, because she is a part of life, so she can come from that underworld back, because she does not slay what is not dead already. So
Yeah.
so that's the thing, that we are here about life. And this is a tough, like, it's a son of a bitch bastard thing, whatever, it is a tough, it's not a sorry. At the same time, it's incredibly gentle, but both go hand in hand, like you so beautifully described. All right, so let me see. Oh yeah, we've got another question. Did you want to have a read at it?
Oh, this is Kathy, our friend Kathy, saying thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and stories. Thank you so much, Kathy. And Matea, who also said hi at the beginning.
Yes.
Thank you
and
very, very much.
Katerina and Kathy also. Katerina and
oh, there's
Anonymous.
another one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did you want to?
Okay, much of the time when I feel like people are feeding, it feels so intense that the only way to deal with it is walk away or say something extremely intense and angry. Was it your experience that this happened at the beginning of your process?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's true.
Absolutely. All sorts. I could tell you all sorts of experiences.
Yes.
Intense, angry, rude. You go through this, and then you learn your way, you find your way. But main thing is just to be okay with it. You're on the most amazing, incredible journey of integration.
Never going to blame, shame, and guilt.
Yes. And you deal with how to deal with it, how to forgive yourself, how to move on. And then also just to be okay with that kind of intensity, because being in the duality and this oppression by this duality, this heaviness, we have had to oppress so many parts of ourselves. There's extreme anger inside of us. There is an extreme animosity. There is also can be this extreme intense feelings of betrayal towards your soul from a human self, because human self feels abandoned. This is all part of this kind of intense. For the anger, I would go and climb a hill, do things, walk away, whatever
physical,
you need.
Physical
That's
activity,
right. And you don't need to win anything with that person. You don't need to win
That's
anything.
What I was going to say. You don't need to see the person as an adversary that you need to fight against. Really embrace that person after you leave and have that angry outburst. Then come to a space where you can embrace that person. They're not your enemy.
Yourself and embrace yourself
Both.
For having that. And you
Both.
don't have
there
to
are no
ever,
enemies.
And you don't have to ever see that person again. You don't have to go and apologize. You don't have to do anything. If you feel like, fine, it's up to you. But you'll see.
Embracing inside is enough.
And moving on. Do whatever you need to do, whether it's bashing the pillow, because anger comes up and you see it's a very releasing. And anger, I found, is the kind of energy that needs, you see, a lot of other energies and emotions. You can just breathe them in, or sometimes your body
anger needs movement.
It needs action. So whether you go and climb a hill, or you go and be punching the thing at the gym, whatever it is, or punching the pillow.
Take a cold shower.
Go drive somewhere and scream in the car and lose the voice, or whatever, you absolutely, and you will encounter it. And again, it's part of this whole process. And also what you become very radical in things, and what you allow yourself to do, and what you're okay with doing. And you appreciate all of these things, because they are all part of you. Is that
Yeah,
what you?
appreciating, I would say, is key, because it's this thing of not perceiving the world as against you and not perceiving others as your enemies is the same thing as not perceiving your own aspects as enemies and not perceiving your own reality as being your eternal suffering, whatever. So it's this really coming to that space of such acceptance that it's gradually you're unhooking the fight mode, unhooking the fight mode, unhooking the fight mode. So you can sort of have a seemingly angry attitude at certain time after you've worked through your own anger, which is what Alex was sharing. And at a certain point, then you can have a seemingly angry attitude, but you do not feel angry because you are not against that person or whatever. You are just being firmly assertive and showing in the way that that person understands. Because notice, many times people who are very stuck in mass consciousness do not understand any other thing, do not understand gentleness. It simply just goes unheard. So sometimes you just have to just, raise your voice.
Absolutely.
Then they will hear you.
True. It's true. But
It's
you
just
don't
knowing
feel
where
angry.
someone is coming from. You don't feel angry. You don't go get lost into anger. You just do it quick, take a deep breath, move on. It's done. And that person is not your enemy.
No, it's not your enemy. And your anger is not your enemy. So
There
this
you
is
are.
what we talked about, that intimacy. You become intimate with every emotion, with every feeling. So you've become intimate with your anger. You're not afraid of it. You feel it. You see its place. You welcome it when it comes, because it shows you where someone's overstepping the boundary. But you don't get overtaken by it anymore.
You don't get overwhelmed.
Yes, but it's only after you've become intimate, after you've climbed many mountains, perhaps, feeling anger. You see, it just depends on your own. But it's this kind of creating your own inner relationship with yourself, with the whole richness of yourself,
the intimacy,
all of things. Yeah, and then you are a master. Then you're sitting on your throne, king and a queen, but not in an old-fashioned way. Just in a way that you're a master. You respect it all. You are everything, and you are all, and you're nothing in I am that I am. And you respect all of the life, all of the bits, all of yourself. And then that then feeds, overflows into your respect, all of the life. And that's why I was saying that, in this kind of new way, there is no space for those that don't, because it's too fine. Like Tanya said, people, they don't hear you, and you are able to, you never, because we are always still here, you never really lose touch, even though you forget what it's like to feel separate. You really quickly forget that, because it's so natural to feel integrated with your soul, but you still remember enough to be able to see where that other person is, if they're so
coming
stuck
from.
And this is what becomes really, you see other people, you can read them easily, you can see those patterns, because they're so, mass consciousness patterns are so predictable, are so small, are so, they, when you're stuck in it, they see so huge, but you become so intimate with that part of yourself too, that becomes so small, and you can see people that are caught in a mass consciousness, you can read their mind. You really can. Like,
Easily.
How you in the old days, they were saying movies and all these superheroes, they can read mind, but you can easily read mind because it's flowing. All these things are flowing. It's so predictable. It is so, that Paulo thing, you
because we've lived it intimately.
Yes, yeah. So it's not from
so
a
we
judgment.
know all of those voices and all of those things.
And all of those bells, this bell rings and automatically you do this. And another bell rings and
and now then you can see it, but because you're not in it anymore, then you can really see the whole picture.
Yeah, and you can then really act with the person where they are. and you don't judge them. But when they are actually interacting with them, all of a sudden they feel something as if they touch something that they can't describe, so
Yeah.
you do leave an imprint on a person.
An imprint.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I say we leave a revolution. It's not just an imprint.
Yes, it is.
And we don't need to do anything.
No.
Sometimes not even say a word.
That's right.
And the revolution starts, and you see it starting as sort of like a tornado picking up in that person's life, just because you pass by.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Anyway, we'll leave that for another time.
All right. Okay, so thank you, dear Tanya. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Alexis. It's been such fun and so simple.
Yes, and flowing and easy. And thank you for each and every one of you that have participated live or that are going to watch this later. Now it's recorded, so it's going to be available. Check out the websites and check out both of our websites, because we have a lot of things we can assist you with. And we are just in love with assisting people just in this simple way, not in taking anything away.
Not trying to fix anything.
No, because that's your responsibility. Each and every one of us responsibility, but it does assist on the way. So please check out what we each offer. And yes, if you have any feedback, please do send us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful feeling you guys as well, because you are actually in this flow. I mean, we feel I don't feel any waves, so it's just a pleasure to be with all of you that are watching at the moment.
There's no hardness, is there? Like
no, it's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, every single one that is here right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.